Hi dear friends, my name is Sergey, I'm a founder of Moychay, and today we will talk about exclusive, special, loose-leaf, premium tea. So many terms you heard: exclusive tea, ceremonial tea, artisanal tea, special tea, AAA grade, superior, real tea, natural tea, organic tea. Many terms. How to divide and how to understand what is real quality tea, what is real artisanal or specialty tea. We all know about coffee, many people know about wine, but about tea is still kind of a miracle. You just know, okay, what you heard something, that good tea must be not tea bags. That's maybe many people know, but all the rest is just an enigma, something unknown, and how to divide it and how to understand it, it's quite difficult. And actually it's impossible, let me say. Maybe it's really harsh truth from the very beginning, but let me explain why. We have many markets, and we know the Indian tea, we know, Sri Lankan tea, Ceylon tea, we know Chinese tea, we know Japanese tea, and we know many other countries who also produce tea. It can be Turkey, it can be Iran, it can be even Argentina or New Zealand or even France or whatever country, Georgia, we have our own tea factory there. Each country, for some reason, belongs to certain, let me say, tradition. For example, Georgia, before it was Soviet Union, and it was learned mostly from India and mostly from Indian procedures and developed its own, for sure. And if you talk about China, China has its own tradition, but also after born of modern China, let me say, many technologies was brought from Japan, actually as Chinese matcha, which was originally the powder tea is from China, but later it was developed in Japan, technology back to China, from Taiwan, with some oolongs, for example. And imagine there are many countries which has their own kind of traditions, which is a blend of all main lines, like Japanese, Chinese, Indian. So it's a very complex topic if you talk about this really professional. But what is quality if you talk about tea? There are so many factors. The first start from the soil itself. So it's rich soil, which contains enough minerals, enough content. So you sip the tea and you feel all the complexity, different flavors, aromas, aftertastes, fragrances, all possible descriptors of the tea. And it's not just plain flat taste, but it also develops from infusion to infusion. If you use traditional Chinese method, Gung Fu Cha, or other methods, it really depends. The soil, the quality of soil, what is it very aggressive agriculture? How many you fertilize it or not? Is it organic or not? What type of production implemented? What type of bush growing? How long tea was stored? And who produced it? And what season? How was the weather? How was the technology, equipment used? And many other aspects. So even from the same plantation, if you use this day, it was raining, next day it was not raining, and the day after was something in between, and all 3 days you have completely different tea. This is why tea is often blended to have kind of standard taste. And this is just one of the factors. Next is possibly wild origin. It means what I start from very beginning, the soil. So as soon as it's not agricultural, very intensively used soil, so it's wild soil. So preferably these trees are growing in some abandoned old plantation, which is now harvested very accurately once a year or twice a year. There are no fertilizers, so they trim the grass, and they mostly try to source tea from certain plantations like this. So they are organic fertilized or not fertilized at all. So preferably wild origin or let me say semi-wild, when it's like old abandoned plantation without any fertilizer, so it's clean soil. The second fact about tea, we talk about the cultivars, what types of tea you grow, because there are so many different tea plants. There are Tea assamica, Tea camellia sinensis, Italiensis, some other varieties, and inside these varieties there are many sub-varieties, and we talk about general types of tea as a plant and also types of tea as a processing. And most of the people who talk about types of tea, they talk about types of processing. So for example, now I'm brewing black tea, which Chinese call red tea, Hong Cha, but there's also oolong, green tea, Hei Cha, or also shu pu'er, white tea, yellow tea, and some experimental semi-fermented or semi-product varieties. Also some shaded tea, green tea like matcha, which is grinded into powder, so it's powder tea. And also the shapes can be very different. For example, here I have some compressed tea, which is traditional Chinese tea cake, and this is loose leaf tea. So it's also many varieties what you can produce from the same bush. Also, if we talk about certain types of tea, the freshness is important. But for certain types of tea, the freshness is absolutely not important. It's better if you store it, like puer tea. You can store it longer, and if the conditions are right. So it's a good humidity, balanced temperature, and tea can be stored, if not forever, but for many, many decades. It just becomes better. It naturally ferments during storage, aging. And for example, for matcha, not only freshness is important, but also how tight you close it and not let the oxygen comes in or light, which spoil the color and the taste of the tea. And the same with some not fermented green teas, which is after 1 or 2 years actually lose a lot of their taste, especially if they're not sealed. So the quality actually, if we talk about most of the teas, we need to know as much as possible about their origin. Which is why we know, okay, this tea is produced in this region, this is a name, and we know that is ruby red tea, Hunbaoshi, from Guizhou province, and they know the elevation it grows, and they know the factory, and they know the farmer. We have the tests about the soil and tea itself, and they know that tea is clean, and they know by taste when they brew it, so it's give multiple infusion, complex flavor, and they know the parameters which regularly belongs to this certain type of tea. Because, for example, if we talk about green tea, we can't wait from green tea some aspects which regularly common to meet in the taste of red tea. So it can't have certain notes in taste, so you don't need to search them there. Even, for example, people who for the first time try white tea and then drink it, and often they see, oh yeah, this tea looks like water. And why? Actually, because they just waited to see something maybe different in this tea, because they never drank it before. And so, for example, imagine aged white tea, because aged white tea loses a lot of fresh white tea parameters. And as soon as you drink it, you immediately feel, okay, something wrong here. But you just need to know that this is aged white, which has certain type of notes, certain aroma flavors, and this is just relevant to this type of tea when you age it. So yeah, the same with many, many other types of tea, because we also have herbal teas, which we practically call tea, but actually there is a plants which is not belongs to Camellia sinensis, it is not tea, it's herbs. And some herbs we can even implement fermentation technology like we do in Georgia, and experiment with blending of these teas, and there are so many ways of producing something which we call tea. So if we somehow sum up all what I said, for me, the natural, the good tea, the premium tea, for sure is a loose leaf tea. So it's not the grinded one, exception only for matcha, because it's a special grinded tea which has its own very complex technology. It has very good, very, let me say, special flavor, and because of the shading, because of actually how do they steam the tea, not roast during the certain steps of the technological processing. Then they create semi-product niancha, which is called in Chinese, or tencha in Japanese. Actually, they use steaming, not pan frying, like for Chinese green teas. And this is why even powdered tea, it's actually quite special, deep, and wonderful flavor. But if we talk about all the other tea, for sure we'll talk about loose leaf tea. And compressed tea, it's also actually loose leaf tea, just it was steamed, pressed and dried. So it's still loose leaf, just in compressed form. What's next? It's actually the harvesting season. So better for certain types, we know the season. Like for green tea, it's good to be harvested in March or April, if you talk about most of Chinese regions, for example. For Georgia, like in our tea factory, maybe you harvest in May and June, most of the time, and some teas a little bit later. From year to year, it can be even a little bit earlier, in very, very end of April also. And if you talk about Georgia, actually. And also, next goes the technology, the complexity, and also how do you pluck the leaf. So because they have different standards for tea picking. It can be one bud, one button 2 leaves, one button 3 leaves, one button many leaves, can be 5 or even more, and a big stem. But depending on what kind of technology you implement, for example, if you harvest one button 5 leaves and try to make a very delicate green tea from it, it will be undrinkable. But if you do heicha, where a special technology of fermentation implemented, there are special ways of production of heicha, dark tea. This type of tea most of the time used quite huge flash, up to 8 leaves. And because of technology, the taste also special and also deep and complex. So it's also more, you need to implement certain technology to develop this taste. So you need to know. Also, oolong tea is often 5 leaves. Many differences comparing to the green or red or white or any other. Oolongs is one of the most complex teas in production. So the technology is important. Yeah, and the last stage, actually, the storage. So for example, if you store tea in very humid conditions, for some aged pours, for many other types, it's very important actually. So this is why, for example, yeah, we use like sealed bags, like really sealed, so there are no oxygen inside. Or for some teas which need to have kind of breathing, like pours, like white tea, yeah, just paper. For matcha, for sure, it must be hermetic packaging, so where no oxygen can go inside. Yeah, and yeah, so that's different depending on the tea. But anyhow, it must be stored in proper conditions, so not too high humidity, no direct sunlight for sure. Yeah, so regular conditions actually, but also it belongs to the producer. And here why we talk about direct farm supply, because as soon as we go to the bigger factories who work with CTC and tea bags, and main problem of tea bags and commodity level tea, it's actually not the fact that, yeah, the tea can be even like average, but as soon as you use simple technology, you harvest like big crop, grind it, make this kind of CTC product, and the fact that it's often blended, stored for a long time, and later you see on the back of tea bags, you see the date of packaging, not the date of actual production of the tea. And yeah, but also in our tea, for example, we have date of packaging, that's regular, but often with this huge amount of commodity teas, they are often not fresh enough. And that's also a problem, because too big amounts, you need to all the time blend it. And this is why it's we all the time work with either small farms or with middle-size producers who, yeah, we can control them. We know what we do, and also we have our own factories, which for sure we control. Yeah, that's bring a lot of advantages. All these aspects, the soil, wildness or not of the soil, how much fertilizers, or preferably no fertilizers at all, the bush, what type of tea, the technology implemented, how it was implemented, the season of harvesting, and finally the storage, all important. So there are no one which is the most important, because yeah, easily can spoil or upscale the quality depending on. But the most three important inside of those, for sure, it's material, technology, and the storage. These three is the most important. For sure, as soon as you start drinking tea, you firstly need to compare and learn, and better to go to your local tea house and talk to the people who professional tea, maybe go to different people, hear different stories, look more YouTube, educate yourself, try many varieties as much as possible, and also with comparing the flavors, the taste, the aftertaste, you need to understand what you need to find in certain type of tea. For example, you know, this oolong must have some floral notes on some aftertastes, and for example, if you later try 5-10 different types of certain tea, you see it's all different, because each farmer has its own, let me say, unique taste, and also we have different soil, and also we have different technology. You know why it's different. Not necessarily it's better or worse, it's just also, yeah, we have all different tastes. Some farmer decide that this is his kind of standard, and he will want some competition, and for this local market, this type of tea is like recognized as the best. But for other group of people in other region or even other country, they have different approach to tea. It's the same with any product, actually, cheese, wine, whatever, any kind of other gourmet product. This is why it's so good to be curious about tea, to learn more, to compare, to understand what is the deepness. And the main fact I didn't tell, but it's very important. When you brew the tea, you need to feel and to understand certain facts. So for sure, it's better to have Chinese way of brewing, so like small vessel, the pitcher or and the cup. Yep. So we have big amount of tea, we brew it and we try it. And for good quality tea, you need to have at least 7 to 12 infusions from 1 to 4 seconds. And you put like around 7 grams of tea for about 120, 130 milliliters teapot. It can be smaller or bigger, or it can be Guy-1 cup with a lid. And with this infusion, you can see how the taste develops from infusion to infusion. You need to feel certain aroma. When you empty the pitcher, the aroma must be not very punching, because if it's very strong, often it's about aromatizing of the tea. But if you talk about natural, without aromatizers, the natural tea, for sure, it don't be very punching, especially after 3 or 4 brewing. If you see that it's multiple infusions, and if you feel like after the second infusion there are no very huge difference in taste, because often aromatized teas, you brew a first infusion, it's very sweet, and after you see like second, third, fifth infusion, it's very like, it means all the quality is very poor, or it was aromatized and some sugar added or something. But it's not so often now. Most of the good responsible vendors don't do that, but still it's possible to find. It's important to understand that a good tea need be possible to brew a lot of times. We can go deep into certain topics, because for each tea there are certain ways to understand its complexity and to understand what parameters belongs to this tea that is typical for this type of tea. For example, with certain types of pu'er tea, if you brew fresh shen pu'er, which is loose from ancient trees, you know it must have certain taste. And if you see like appearance of like fresh green tea, it must be really very fresh and very intense aroma. Yeah, so if it's like a little bit grayish color, or like it looks like it's not fresh, right? But for red tea, for example, it's not relevant. So many aspects about visual appearance of the tea, of the product itself, and aroma and taste and aftertaste and all the parameters I mentioned behind, which is about the production and the soil. So this is a complex term. You just need to learn and to know more about the tea. Yeah, you know, where it's grown, how it's produced, what the elevation, what the cultivar, who made it and how, and after you try it, you see it. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. Wish you a pleasant day and drink great tea.